GM, and welcome to Moloch Traps, our latest podcast here at From A to Z. I'm Z-Fi, this is Zombie Shepherd, and we're excited to be bringing you this new show in collaboration with BanklessDAO and its audio-visual team. To be clear, opinions in this series, expressed by either of us, are our own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of BanklessDAO at large. This week, we will continue to study and discuss excerpts from the Meditations on Moloch essay, written by Scott Alexander. The essay provides examples of multipolar traps, and it delves into various instances from history, biology, and economics to illustrate how competition often results in collective harm. In today's episode, we'll discuss education. Let's start with Alexander's words on the education system. In my essay on reactionary philosophy, I talk about my frustration with education reform. People ask why we can't reform the education system. But, right now, students' incentive is to go to the most prestigious college they can get into so employers will hire them, whether or not they learn anything. Employers' incentive is to get students from the most prestigious college so that they can defend their decision to their boss if the hiring goes wrong, whether or not the college provides value added. And college's incentive is to do whatever it takes to get more prestige, as measured in US News and World Report rankings, whether or not it helps students. Does this lead to huge waste and poor education? Yes. Could the education god notice this and make some education decrees that lead to a vastly more efficient system? Easily. But since there is no education god, everybody is just going to follow their own incentives, which are only partly correlated with education or efficiency. From a god's eye view, it's easy to say things like, students should only go to college if they think they will get something out of it, and employers should hire applicants based on their competence and not which college they went to. But from within the system, everyone's already following their own incentives correctly, so unless the incentives change, the system won't either. Now, before we go on, there's a slightly different form of multi-agent trap worth investigating. In this one, the competition is kept at bay by some outside force, usually social stigma. As a result, there's not actually a race to the bottom. The system can continue functioning at a relatively high level, but it's impossible to optimize and resources are consistently thrown away for no reason. Lest you get exhausted before we even begin, I'll limit myself to 4 examples here: education, science, government corruption, and Congress.
So, like you were saying, the reason these multi-agent traps are slightly different is because they've created a sustainable, terrible system where it's not a race to the bottom. It's somehow created a flywheel, even though that flywheel produces enormous amounts of waste. The entire system is wasteful and not actually accomplishing the goal it's meant to achieve, which is to educate people. And so, like, the same with science and Congress and government corruption, we're going to get into in other things. But, like, this is, it's slightly different, but it's also, it's a self-sustaining system, but it doesn't mean that it's actually sustainable. And I think that's where it does still, it's found an equilibrium, but it doesn't mean that at some point it won't just break.
It's found a way to sustain itself within the system, but the system itself is still headed off the cliff.
Exactly. Yeah, that's basically it. And so I've been thinking about this and just trying to think about, like, are there other types of systems that have created that flywheel effect for themselves? And I'm still thinking about it some more. I think there were some I came up with, but I just want to think them through a bit more. But we're going to have these 4 episodes to really discuss kind of the differences of these and why they're not necessarily a race to the bottom. And I guess with this one, for instance, it's because you are still producing employees. You are still, getting people into jobs. It is still like, you have a funnel from school straight into college. So it's like it doesn't really, like, there's no down to race. The prices are only going up, and the access to schools is only getting harder. There's really no like one of the hallmarks I think of a race to the bottom is this idea that you can keep changing teams until all values are sacrificed.
Ah, yes. Yeah, it's just a race to extract at any cost, any rate, at any, any possible way.
Right. Exactly. Like, cuz as a customer, you can always change to the cheaper option, and that's kind of why, competition is good until ultimately what happens is one person wins and forms a monopoly. Or in order to not have a monopoly, there are two options, but those two options can basically form the price. Like they can agree with each other what the price is. And it doesn't actually, competition doesn't actually suit the customer in those cases. When it starts to boil down to, oh, there's only Facebook or X. Those are your two options for social media because, oh, I want to use, or TikTok, and TikTok is, basically getting fudded hard because it's China, because it came from a Chinese company and everybody is like, it is China. And it's like, you realize everything we accuse TikTok is the same stuff that Facebook is doing, the same stuff X is doing, but they're Americans. So I
Yeah.
guess.
So it's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the education system is pretty rotten all the way through. Like, he's talking about this basically just one to one with prestige and getting good jobs. And, you know, he's not really discussing how rotten it is throughout. Like, that's just one facet, really, of the education
Right.
system.
He focuses on the education system, the higher education, the college education section. But like you said, the system is rotten all the way to the bottom.
No, but even still, I'm saying it's this facet of how education, like you want to score the highest scores in high school so you can go to the most prestigious college just to be able to get jobs. And the jobs are just hiring based on the names. But when it says like the college just wants to get more prestige, the other thing the college is doing that's completely rotten is become a loan shark. And it's basically like, prestige also has this price tag attached to it. And,
Yes.
these colleges have application fees and everything else. And it's just so expensive all the way down the ladder. And the jobs that you can potentially get don't necessarily pay for any of that. Like, how many people get these, prestige, like, that's the other thing too, is maybe if you go to the most prestigious colleges, you have no problem getting a job. But if you just went to like maybe 20 or 30 on the list, like, maybe you're still like shuffling and fighting for jobs. And depending on the field you're in, it's actually more lucrative to be a bartender.
Right. Where's that prestige level? Where is it? Where is it worth your while?
Right. And meanwhile, like, the student loans and the loan sharks are calling, and you have to turn this like education, quote unquote, because like as Alexander just said, like, you may not be getting a good knowledge base, you may not actually be getting education as much as you're getting that certain degree, that certain name from a college. And now you're going to get a job not necessarily based on your knowledge or your competence.
You're just getting that embossed logo on the transcripts.
Right.
Very expensive embossed logo. A big part of that, a big reason for all that dramatic increase in costs at the college level too, is colleges are funded as a combination of like state funding, federal funding, whatever, and then the tuition costs. Pretty much every year consistently, the amount that the government pays the schools reduces, so they have to increase their costs on the tuition side.
Right.
If you do that, you're going to drive away students, you're going to drive away prospective customers, essentially. So to counter that, they build new stadiums, they build new fields, they build new libraries to try to draw people in and justify that additional expense. And it's like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, and I can tell you that one like personally because I worked in the commercial furniture industry for like 18 years and I still do it occasionally. But in that industry, both with schools and government, like that industry survives on the schools and government because basically
For sure.
they will get rid of furniture that is brand new just to get like some hot new stuff in because if you want to have your students having the best, you don't want damaged chairs, you don't want, mixed classroom chairs, you don't want to have some of these chairs and some of those chairs. So they will just refurnish the entire room. The other stuff most of the time literally just goes in the trash. Like no one will buy it secondary. There's no time to deal with it. There's no like if somebody's not going to take it from the classroom right now, it goes in the trash. And oh yeah, so like the amount of waste that goes into and that's just one industry. That's just how education and government affects the furniture industry. So imagine every other industry that's tapped into these things and how often that they must like update a new technology building just because like oh new stuff came out we have to like you know what I mean? Buy all new iPads, like replace all the TVs in this room, replace all the computers in that room, like year after year on perfectly good equipment just to remain the most prestigious at the cutting edge of technology with the flashiest new furniture and everything else. And yeah, that huge tuition is because of all that fancy accoutrement and prestige, but like, is the education good? That's like, and more
Did the
importantly,
education change by spending the money on the furniture? It didn't.
well, that money's not going to teachers if it's going to the furniture, but either way, like even if everybody's getting paid well, the teachers are getting paid well, the staff is paid well, whatever, you cannot guarantee a job to anyone who goes to college. There is no
Right.
guarantee of a job, but there is a guarantee of a debt that doesn't go away when you die. There's a debt that follows you past your death for sure, but there's no guaranteed job. Like if I mean, come on, that is a racket right there.
There's a risk reward that I would not have accepted if I
That's
understood the
mafia
full.
level.
Yeah, that's loan sharkery.
Yeah, and like kids really don't understand what they're getting into and I guess their parents should know better, but a lot of the times these kids are going to college for the first time. Their parents didn't go to school. And they're getting these kids, you know, young and dumb with no education on money because going down the stack, nobody taught you about money in high school. Nobody taught you how to do your taxes, like
You don't know how the financial system works. It just, there's dollars that you need to pay for stuff. Get more.
right. And that's why you end up getting told you have to go to college because you have to like get a good job and it's all, yeah. And it's just competition. And that's really what it comes down to is that a lot of this competition just leads to collective harm. It's not actually helpful to the school system. It doesn't actually help the students. It might help some of the teachers if they're being well paid, but I guarantee it's probably helping more the dean and the other people that actually make these financial decisions. Like those are the people that are probably cashing out the biggest, you know?
Right. And that's part of the difference here in these last few episodes. It's a race to the bottom, but it hasn't gone all the way to the bottom. It's found this failure sustenance zone. We've gotten comfortable in this. This is how college works, and tuition just goes up, and we've gotten numb to how the system is designed. That's
Yeah.
It's not helpful to anyone. We're sacrificing values. We're sacrificing money. We're sacrificing the education level of the students that are being output from the institutions. It's just all sacrifice in the name of competition. Got to be more prestigious.
Yeah, and it's also a lot like the two income trap. It's very related to the two income trap because like if you want to get a decent job, you have to have a bachelor's in something. Like not having a bachelor's is like limits you a lot. So even if you just get like the cheapest bachelor degree you can get in business or whatever, like having that BA is better than just having an associate's or just a high school diploma. And that doesn't even count the prestige. It's like you have to get a piece of paper. And I mean, that's kind of like what the lower education, when you get to like, kindergarten through 8th grade, that entire system was designed to create employees. It's not designed to create
100%.
critical thinkers, like
Right. You're just manufacturing, mass producing cogs for our societal machine. Make sure they can be places on time. Make sure that they can follow instructions and sit and do what they're told. And here are the basic tasks that you need to know to work a drive-through at McDonald's, but only that.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's why another thing that college signals, it's why you need the BA, because like it signals to an employer that, oh, you go above and beyond the required 12 years. You are actually a better cog than most because you bought the bait and hook, line, and sinker. You'll probably get a mortgage and a wife and kids and the whole deal. And all of that stuff locks you into employment, and like it locks you into the system. And what better way to ensure that people never escape the system than to have predatory loans that follow them around for the rest of their life that never equal the amount of money that the job can pay?
Automatically neutralizing any of the potential benefit that you thought you might get by putting that additional time and effort into getting the degree that ends up shackling you to your death.
Basically, yeah.
Neat.
That is the game, right? That is actually the game. That's what it was created to do. And it just gets worse because you'll never get out of the interest. And the other part of it is it does, and we're going to get into science in another episode, but it does tie into the research part of things, because then a lot of people just end up becoming teachers and they end up in another type of system in which the research itself suffers in the race for funding.
Ah, yes. Or again, even prestige in the race to get published in some sort of a peer-reviewed journal that's going to get you or your organization more interest, more intrigue, more funding again,
Yeah.
And you want to be first. You don't want to be working on the same thing as somebody else and have them get there first. So now you're almost incentivized to rush your results, don't duplicate and get there, with maybe half-assed results, but first.
Yes.
And that's not ideal for everybody.
Exactly.
Short-term interest.
Right. So, yeah, and I mean, that is a big part of the education system, because a large percentage of the research that gets done every year in science is done by universities.
Funded by megacorps.
Monsanto and Shell and whoever else. There's a lot that you could really get into that's like really into the micro about, the way these loans work and things like that. But I think most everybody probably either already knows that stuff or is like dealing with it.
Right.
They know about it from experience. But I mean, it's really dangerous and predatory the way these loans operate, because a lot of the time when what they're telling you to pay isn't even touching the principal. So people think that they're paying a minimum when all they're paying is the interest. Like that minimum is
Or
the
not
interest.
even.
Yeah, and like they're literally paying on it every month and it's still going up because the wording of these loans. And yeah, it's just.
I also wanted to touch a little bit on lower education, secondary and primary schools.
Mm-hmm.
We see plenty of systemic failures in those institutions as well. In primary schools, especially since this passage of No Child Left Behind, it's just this force feed through a system. Whether or not you get the topics, that's next year's teacher's problem. Like they just want to push the cogs through the machine.
Yeah.
Standardized testing doesn't work when everyone's brain works differently. It gives you a certain metric. It gives you a certain score of, okay, this school is or isn't coming anywhere near the levels of what we expect them to be. But it's like turning children into farm animals. The school system becomes a CAFO.
The teachers end up teaching you how to test,
not what to learn and how to interact with the world and how to interact with other people. Right, exactly.
You're not actually learning critical thinking or how to use math or how to learn English or how to, like critical thinking is just not a platform for education at all. Like you really, like you don't have to do the word problems in math class. And to be honest, the word problems are the only useful part of math if you think about it. Like knowing how to use a formula in real life is like you can learn all the formulas in the world, but if you literally come up to a problem in the real world and don't realize that geometry or multiplication or some algebra solves this, then it didn't do you any good. Like
You have to understand the context.
people are like, why, in high school, throughout school, it's just one of those big jokes of like, why would you care? When am I ever going to need math? I think I use math every day. I don't think there's a day I'm not using math. Like
at some point, you're going to need it.
I feel like there's a lot of people that still don't use math every day. And I'm like, how do you survive? How do you live? Like, I use math every day. Like, a calculator even doesn't help if you don't know how to use the math.
Right. You have to know what plussing is to plus stuff and have it matter to you.
Yeah, well, yeah, like, and especially when it comes to like how to use multiplication and percents and like it baffles me that people don't know how to tip. And like, even if they, like
like with a mental percentage. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, depending on, if you're going for a 20% tip, you divide by 5, right? Like that is 20% of the total cost. Like, wow.
So that's, I think, what we need is more of that, like, life
if you want
skills,
to tip nicely, divide by 4.
There you go.
25%.
Social skills. Those are the types of things that we need to be instilling in students, not, memorize this, memorize that, regurgitate this, regurgitate that. And it seems like the teachers are feeling it too. I've got friends who went to school to be teachers, went into the education system, and are no longer teachers. For various reasons, but like, not for me, they said.
Yeah.
The teachers aren't paid enough to do what they do. They're expected to do way more duties than just teach, especially now in this age of COVID. They've got to learn all the new emerging technologies so they can do this remote classroom stuff. They have to learn how to be counselors to their kids, and they have to learn how to, tutor students who need additional help after class. There's so many more activities that go into being a teacher that just aren't compensated, that teachers aren't feeling it. And I don't think generally American adults are feeling it. I don't think they see the value in teachers.
Yeah.
Therefore, we don't value them. We don't pay them enough. And that's another system that's like, well, there's just enough teachers for butts in seats, but nobody's really going anywhere great. So we'll just get more cheaper teachers from next year's class to burn them out too. And it's another flywheel churn of just low-level failure perpetually.
Yeah, and I've actually seen some videos where teachers like on TikTok and things like that are saying like, I have 7th grade students that can't read at a 4th grade level. Like they cannot read. And it's crazy to think that like how high illiteracy is in the US. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think, realistically, especially the way they teach you how to test, I really think you don't have to read to pass a standardized test. Like, if you know how to test well enough and you just recognize enough words, you can fake your way through it. And I remember in high school being told like, oh, C is the most common answer. So if you ever don't know an answer, put C.
Yep, I remember that.
Even if you don't like know the answer, you have a 25% chance of guessing it right. You know what I mean?
And if you can eliminate one even, now you're at 33% chance,
Right?
It just gets easier.
Eliminate 1, eliminate 2. Like, exactly. Like, and if it's C and D and you don't know which one it is, it's C.
It's C. So we know how to test, but we don't know what any of those answers were or the questions, and it doesn't matter.
Oh, man.
Whoops.
Yeah. So, and this is like really at all levels of education, like going from the top to the bottom, when the education is done for this purpose of creating employees and just teaching like a really generalized version of everything, then like you just get like even specialists all know the same stuff. There's really no like deep information that gets learned until you start to like either do your own research or do your, have a practice and get experience. And even then, like, I feel like you have to be really invested to like care that much. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like in our society, like doctors don't care about people. Like if they ever did, like doctors definitely don't care anymore. It's just a business. It's just the highest paying job you can get. It's just
I would argue that. I think, first of all, as a generalization, I'm sure there are definitely doctors who care. But what I would adjust is it's as if doctors are forced by the system to care more about their liabilities and to make sure they've got their malpractice coverage and so might sue me. They're always dealing with these externalities and these issues of the system rather than caring for the patient as the primary objective.
I would argue that the RNs and the nurses probably care more than the doctors. The
Ooh,
doctors actually spend
maybe.
less time with patients than the nurses do.
That's true too.
And they also aren't as rewarded as well. So they're definitely not driving the Lambos.
So we got a lot of fails. What do we do? Like, I know a lot of people, especially for lower education now, are turning to homeschooling, but like, how do we address this system when it's stuck in a flywheel of failure? Is there is there a way that we can? I just don't know. I feel like there's just got to be systemic adjustments that need to be made, large scale systemic adjustments to correct these trajectories, and I don't even know where to start.
I mean, I don't know about the system itself. I definitely do think that part of, to back up the teachers and talk about how hard teaching is, especially for the primary and secondary, like if the parents aren't doing anything, if the parents were
This is
poorly
huge.
educated and the parents are always busy at work and the parents are being like just drugged through the mud and not able to be parents, they're in the two income trap. They're in the, underpaid and overworked camp. And they're just not able to, even if they have the ability, they don't have the time and maybe they don't have the mental capacity, like the patience and to be more there for their children and teaching them more on their own. And it is, as we talked about also, like um it is easier to just hand a kid an iPad and let Moloch raise your kid. And then, you know, that little demon gets let loose at school and the teacher's got to deal with all the issues that you as a parent don't deal with because you're too busy working a job and it's the teacher's job. And that's what I was really getting at even with the doctor thing, is that I feel like everything in our society has become, we've externalized everything because we're all cogs in a machine. So anything that's not my job is someone else's job. So I can throw trash on the ground because it's someone's job to pick up the trash. And I can just dump my kids at you at school because it's your job to teach my kids. Like, and so it is this kind of like everything becomes externalized and there really is no like passion in your work, because any people who become passionate in their work will be abused by the system.
They'll end up absorbing more of those externalities until they break.
And that's really what it is like we have a system in which all of the money is racing in directions away from where it would actually be doing any help. It's racing away from the places that it needs to go to line the pockets of the people who create the programs or the CEOs or the, you know what I mean? Everything is just going the wrong direction. And therefore, like, no one really can, there's no incentive to do a good job. There's no incentive to have any passion for my work. And so, therefore, I'm going to do the job I got paid for and maybe a little bit less if I feel like you're slighting me. and absolutely no more. And I get off at 6, it's 5:59, I'm hanging up the phone. You know what I mean?
You get my time only.
Right.
Only.
Like,
The amount of effort that gets added to that time depends on how I feel.
and this exactly. And this is part of the reason I kind of feel uncomfortable going out to eat a lot of the time, because I feel like the person who has to help me hates me. Not because they actually hate me, but they hate their job. They hate being there. They hate the fact that they're not going to take home enough money today. And so therefore anything at all about me that is unpleasant is worse. They hate me. They you know what I mean? Like why would you like a customer? Like, think about it.
That's why tipping's important. But you do that last, you know? You don't want to spend the whole meal being hated only to go, I'm actually nice. You know, tip them.
Right. Or I'm actually worse than you thought.
Yeah, right? Nothing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's the idea that when you go out and you buy things from people now, you don't actually feel like the person that you're buying goods and services from cares about you. They're literally filling a seat because they have to. And the fact that there's no incentive actually makes the jobs not just unrewarding, but detrimental. Like, when you know that you're going to spend 8 hours at a place and that 8 hours doesn't cover your bills, you know you're going to spend 40 hours a week and that doesn't cover your bills. I don't care about this place. You
100.
are not doing it for me. And so I'm here because I haven't found anything better, and because maybe there's nothing better out there, because I didn't go to the most prestigious school and I didn't get a high enough degree. And even if I did, I'm like, there's a bunch of kids that you can hire that are younger than me. And you know what I mean? Like,
all of these voids, all of these feelings of like, there's no satisfaction, there's no incentive, there's no enjoyable, it's not getting me anywhere in my career. All of these feelings are the symptoms of Moloch. Those are the values that we sacrificed in our pursuit of optimizing for capital,
right.
or prestige, or whatever.
And it doesn't make us feel better as humans, because, like, personally, I'm a person that I don't really half-ass at work. I do things,
Same.
I'm not like, I might not be the most like over the top overworker, but I'm definitely not a person who's going to cut corners just because, like, if I see something needs to be done a certain way and I've already done it wrong, I'm going to undo it and do it right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm that kind of person. But it sucks being that kind of person and knowing that, like, your managers will take advantage of that and not reward you for it. And that, a lot of people talk about this in social media, how, like, doing a good job actually ensures that you can't move up the ladder, because if you're good at your job, we don't want you to
Can't
go
replace
anywhere.
you. If we know how good you are at your job, we'll just max you out at that all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's no incentive to work hard or do extra.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just really like, it's detrimental to our spirit, because people do want to do a good job, and they don't want to feel abused by it. It's the prisoner's dilemma. They feel like, I'm cooperating, you're defecting. Society is defecting. I can't cooperate hard enough.
It's designed that way.
Right. Like, there's no amount of cooperating with the system that is going to get me the American dream. All of the cooperating with the system actually took away the American dream. And that's why the younger generations are so mad at the boomers and a lot of the early, like the older Gen X, because we feel like that group of people got everything and they took the perverse incentives. They took all of the things and they voted to pull the ladder up. And now the ladder's pulled up and they're saying, well, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do all the, like.
They already put our bootstraps into collateralized debt obligations and liquidated that shit in 2008. We're out of bootstraps.
Right. And then they can blame the corporations and the corrupt government that they literally voted for. And I understand that we're in a system that forces you to vote a certain way, but like all of the generations who enjoyed those things and didn't speak up about it. And I mean, let's think about it realistically. Like the 60s and the 70s was very like outspoken against these things, was very outspoken about corporatization. I mean, even the beatniks in the 50s, like there's a long history of people resisting this thing. And then those very same hippies, the same people that went to Woodstock, turned into the accountants and the middle managers and the paper pushers who voted in Nixon and Reagan and just turned our country into, like, sent all the manufacturing jobs away and just turned our country into a corporate funnel that just funnels all of the money up to CEOs. And the more money that CEOs can get to shareholders, the better. And it comes at the expense of everything: the quality of life of the workers, the quality of education we're able to receive, the quality of food, everything. And the fact that we're one of the only civilized countries on the planet that doesn't have free healthcare. Like
or free education. We've got public education, but it's limited and it's not great. It's covered by tax dollars, but there's no higher education.
Kids go into debt over lunch at public school. Like there's literally lunch debt for children. Like what kind of country do we live in where we have lunch debt for children?
And they'll cut you off if you don't pay it.
Right. So they will literally starve children if they don't have the money.
It's not a great system.
So I don't know. You asked, how do you fix it? I have no idea. How do you fix a system that's that broken? And that's really what we're going to get around to with all of these multi-agent traps with science and Congress and government corruption. Like this all ties together, and it's broken into 4 separate episodes for a reason, or at least we're going to do government corruption and Congress together, because we could go on about that.
I don't want to do that.
But yeah, I mean, in general, like, I don't know how you fix these corrupt systems. I don't know how you, like, the earlier episodes were all game theory, and it is a question of like psychology in a sense. How do you get people to stop defecting against each other? How do you get people to not just take and take and take from the common goods and not just dump and put all of your waste into the ecosystem at everyone else's expense? How do you get people to actually think about the externalities of the things that they do to make money? And these systems are basically systems in which they've created a flywheel of how to make money. No matter how perverse or wasteful or insane the system is, they've got it down. They created a system. And that's, I guess, what makes these different is these are game theories and races to the bottom based on human behavior. And these are like, oh, no, we figured out the human behavior. And we know exactly how to get all the incentives to do all the wrong things forever.
Forever. That's a good summary, I think. It's a good differentiation there.
Or at least until the wheels fall off. And that's kind of a way to look at it, too, is like, at some point, the GDP says, the global capitalist system doesn't work anymore because you can't just go up forever. At some point, that system breaks, the monetary system breaks, and that breaks a lot of other things. It breaks the prestige of these schools that are built on dollars, for instance. It breaks the prestige of the government, and government's gone. That's it. The dollar breaks, there's no more US government. Like, you know what I mean? Like everything falls apart. Like it's not, when everybody's paycheck literally disappears, systems stop.
Stop. Yes. Yeah.
So other than that, I really don't know how to change the system other than it breaking. And actually it's interesting because I was listening to Sergey from Chainlink talking about this, and he was saying that his vision for crypto is there's 2 visions, the slow vision and the fast vision. And the slow one being that over time, these technologies slowly get adopted by people, and then they become more and more prominent. More and more people use them, and they just are a better product. So over time, fintech and other things will slowly start using crypto rails of their own accord because it is a better technology. The same way that everyone slowly migrated to being on the internet because it is simply a better way to market. And so that's the slow version. The fast version is institutions keep fucking up, things keep breaking, banks keep going under. We have more, Silicon Valley banks and more, SBFs and more. I mean, there's been a cascading banks, like a lot of small banks have been crashing in the US over the last couple months. And so if these banks keep crashing and these systems keep imploding, then crypto gets adopted because you don't have a choice.
Exactly. If you need to transact, this is the only functioning system left.
So, yeah, I mean,
Huh.
the question is, though, like, it's the only functioning system left. However, what sustains the internet in a country that just got taken down? Like, what happens to the cell phone system? What happens to the internet? There's definitely a dark period where everything goes dark. But honestly, like, not to be a doomer, but if that's what you think is going to happen, crypto makes all the sense in the world because everything goes dark. Yes, you need to have money in your pocket. Yes, you need to know how to like grow your own food and other things. Like, you need to be self-sovereign as much as possible. But if everything goes dark, there's no more internet in your country, everything's going to crap. If all your assets are on the blockchain, then your assets are fine until you can get back to them. Until the internet comes back on or you get out of that country and get somewhere where you can reaccess your funds, they will be there. Your Bitcoin will be there. Your Ethereum and your ERC20s will all be where you left them. All you need to do is make sure to have that 12 to 24, seed phrase. And like, you need to be able to keep that safe. There's one thing you need to keep safe, and that is your private key.
The key. Yep.
Easier said than done, but the point being that if you are in a system where all of your assets are in Capital One or Chase Bank or even your United States credit union, when the shit hits the fan, your credit union is no good. And
sorry, we've only got a $20 withdrawal limit per day enforced right now. It's your money, but we're only going to give you a little bit.
But we're saying, like, you're probably looking at hyperinflation at this point too. So $20,
or it all goes to zero. Yeah. It's either the system renders it useless, or the banks and the centralized institutions will gatekeep, rendering it useless.
And I guess I'm saying it wrong too. Like, everybody assumes that things will just hit the fan, and it's more likely that more and more circuit breakers slowly trip off. It's just lights in the mansion slowly going off, and everyone thinks, oh, we'll turn the lights back on in the East Wing as soon as like we get a little more money to pay the electric bill. As soon as we pay off some of these debts, like, we'll turn the CIA right back on or whatever. We'll turn the Social Security. Don't worry, Social Security's coming back. Don't worry about it. No, it's not. When the circuit breakers start tripping, everything that goes off is off forever. And it's just a cascade after that. But it's not a world-ending shit hits the fan, global warming just started. It's slow. Bad things keep stacking up. And basically you can say we've been in it since 2008, 2000, 1980. I don't know. Like, how far back do you want to go with have we been nothing but backsliding since World War II ended? Every war, as I think we kind of mentioned this in arms races, but every war can essentially be looked at as whale fall. And whale fall, as we've said in other episodes, is essentially a boom in the amount of food that's available at the bottom of the ocean because something massive died. Something massive happened and caused all of this economic activity. But essentially, every one of those booms over a war is followed by a bust. And our race to the bottom is that if we don't start another war, the economy will just keep going down. You have to have wars in order to have an economy.
Hate that.
And, it's a slow thing. It's not as suddenly it's happening. Like we're in, like Afghanistan went on for 18, 19, 20 years. Like it went on forever. And as soon as we got out of Afghanistan, we jumped into Ukraine and Israel and, Taiwan is going to be next. Like it's going to be next. Like it's not a question. It's a matter of when, not if. Like everything is, and then we just have like people are waiting for civil war in the US. What makes you think it's not already happening? Like I feel like we've been in
News
a civil
doesn't
war.
say so.
And I mean, that's the other thing too. When you say news doesn't say so, like I think we have mentioned this in other episodes, but it's worth mentioning again. Like what the dollar is worth right now is less than it was worth in the Depression. Everybody keeps saying we're waiting for a recession. We're avoiding a recession. We are in a depression. That's it.
Also, we are at the top of a bubble. So there's that.
Oh, wow. So, yeah. So, I mean, exactly. We are at the top of a bubble. And I assume the bubble you're talking about is basically the 2008 climb back up.
Yeah. The whole financial system, the monetary money supply.
Where they basically fleeced us. They fleeced the taxpayers for billions of dollars to like inflate their market. And then yeah.
And then we paid them billions for doing it to help them out after they took our money. Yeah, everything's working great.
Well, education system is certainly not teaching you about any of this stuff. I guess we're damn near conspiracy theorists at this point. Yeah, I don't know. You have any other closing statements? I think we kind of
help. That's all I
yeah,
got.
look, if anybody thinks that the conversation we've had here doesn't make any sense, blame the education system.
And let's talk about it. Let's help fix it. Because while we might not have on the spot solutions here, somebody's got to have solutions. We're capable of finding solutions. We've got to coordinate in order to solve these problems, or we're going to get wrecked.
Absolutely. You said it. Human coordination. That's what we're here about. This show is about Moloch Traps, but it's heading more in a solution-oriented area of like, how do we help avoid these Moloch Traps and get into a pattern of human coordination? And I think it begins on the individual level. Each individual has to be ready to cooperate in order to form a cooperative. That's it,
Well put.
Well, thanks for watching today's episode of Moloch Traps about education or lack thereof. We hope you enjoy this series. As always, none of what we said is legal or financial advice, and we encourage listeners to do their own research in these areas before making any related decisions. In other words, educate yourself. If you find our content informational, educational, or entertaining, and then you like Rusty my cat, and you'd like to support us, then please collect these episodes on tape.xyz. 18% of the proceeds go back to BanklessDAO. 2% supports Tape for hosting our videos, and the rest helps us to make From A to Z productions possible. To stay on top of our weekly series, subscribe to us on BanklessDAO YouTube. And don't forget to like and comment while you're there. We will see you next time, friends.